Hi, I'm Jacques Gordon. I'm the global strategist at LaSalle Investment Management. I'd like to share with you some of the macro themes that we see shaping the outlook for the year ahead, and really even beyond the year ahead to the next decade. We're entering a new decade, and it's a good time to look back on where we've been and remind ourselves what could lie ahead. You think back just how the last 8 or 9 years have unfolded since the global financial crisis. I don't think any of us really thought it would work this way, but it's been slow, steady growth in the economy, amazingly steady capital markets, particularly falling bond rates that have just helped so many different ways our real estate asset class perform well. And that was almost a constant tailwind for good performance over the last 8 or 9 years. As we look ahead to the next 3 years, it's going to be much more balanced, headwinds and tailwinds. The big three headwinds we see start with the slowing of the economy, growing from globally at about a 4% level down to about a 3% level. So really a 25% drop in the rate of growth around the world. The second headwind is that we're starting from very high levels of valuations. It's going to be harder to reproduce what we've just experienced in terms of capital appreciation or total return when you're starting from such a high price. The third headwind is really the way in which technology continues to surprise, disrupt, interrupt, and really hurt the income streams of many of the properties in our portfolios. So these headwinds have crept up on us. They didn't come all at once, but they've been coming and building over the last 2 or 3 years. We think over the next 2 or 3 years, they're going to continue to build and become a damper or a brake on the kind of double-digit returns that we've earned over the last 7 or 8 years. But what's interesting to me about each of these headwinds is embedded in them, when you really study them, are often a tailwind hidden inside that really go with each of those themes I mentioned. For instance, for the slowing economy, well, when you have a slow economy, generally you also have low interest rates. Those two things go together. They've been going together, and we'll expect that they will continue to go together in the years ahead. Low interest rates, of course, lower our cost of borrowing, and they also keep us within a fair value range relative to the fixed income market. The second thing is that, well, yes, high valuations are a bit of a damper or a brake on future appreciation, but they do something else. They bring more capital to real estate because the way capital markets work is they tend to reward the asset classes that have recently given them good performance, as we have. And this momentum of capital, I think, can last 2, 3, 4 more years ahead. And when it also is taken into account that a lot of the capital is underallocated to real estate and is still struggling to get to an 8 to 10% allocation, our prediction is that this will be a tailwind. More money wanting to get into real estate, even with those high valuations. The third tailwind that pairs up with the disruptive technology is that technology also creates value. We think about it a lot of different ways in real estate, but one way I like to think about it is the way that the co-location of tech-savvy firms, employees, and really just value creation, whether it's life sciences or software, they create these innovation hubs with a strong neighborhood feel to them, and that is a great place to be looking to create value in the next 3 years. So these headwinds and tailwinds are a useful way of just thinking about how the next 2 or 3 years will shape up. There'll be some cyclicality that we'll be fighting after an 8 or 10 years of growth. Eventually that'll slow down. But the other way I like to think about it, particularly with an asset class that costs a lot to get into and the transaction costs are high to get in and out, is to be looking for these deeper currents as well as the headwinds and tailwinds. Think about sailing a boat where you may be tacking, you may be working with the wind, fighting the wind, but something you often don't see unless you're really paying attention is the deeper currents, the tide, the way in which the boat is moving through a water, and that water itself can have a current that is the same or different than the headwinds and tailwinds. These deeper currents we call secular changes, and these secular changes at LaSalle have been very helpful to us in looking out beyond the cycle to, say, a 10-year view of what will work in a real estate portfolio. The names we've given to them are summarized by the acronym DTU+E. Many of you have heard us talking about this before. The D is demographics, the T technology, the U is urbanization, and the E is the environmental factors that are increasingly at work in the world. So stepping back, these headwinds, these tailwinds, and these deep current trends, they really help organize your thinking for how to manage your portfolio over the next 2 or 3 years, and really how to also think about where you'd like to deploy more capital or redeploy capital as you sell other properties. The headwinds and tailwinds are particularly helpful for the next 2 or 3 years, but these deep current trends, they're good for decades ahead. We hope you find these ideas helpful as you look ahead to a challenging new decade. Thank you very much for listening.